On this episode of the People Down South podcast, we have an amazing interview with Cameron Eds, lead singer of the legendary 80s cover band, the Velcro Pygmies.
We'll discuss how the band started up, whether Cameron thinks the term cover band is offensive, and one thing about him that shocks everyone when they find out. This is a good one, and Cameron doesn't hold anything back.
We hope y'all enjoy. Let's go.
Welcome to the People Down South.
To the people down south.
Welcome 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 to the people down
Welcome
south.
to the people down south.
Podcast.
Hello, my fellow Americans.
Hey, everybody.
All right. Hang it, Bobby.
Hosted by Mark and Chris.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the People Down South podcast. I'm Mark, and that's Chris, and the purpose of this podcast is to highlight inspiring individuals and hopefully learn something from them in the process.
This is the first part of a three-part interview we did with Cameron, the lead singer of the band Velcro Pygmies. Mark, what did you think about the interview?
He is certainly an entertaining guy, and he definitely didn't hold anything back on this interview. Loved chatting with him.
Yeah, it was a fascinating interview for sure. I can't believe he's been doing this for over 30 years. So without further ado, here's our interview with Cameron Eds from the Velcro Pygmies. All right, today on the People Down South podcast, we're chatting with someone who's been in a band and rocking in the South longer than some of you have been alive.
But rest assured, this guy and his band will blow the socks off of most any act today. I don't know how he keeps up that level of intensity on stage and maintains abs that 20-year-olds would strive for.
So without further ado, we'd like to welcome Cameron from the world-famous Velcro Pygmies. How are you today, Cam?
I'm doing great, man. It's good to hear y'all's voices. You guys are sounding very good. The fidelity is excellent.
I appreciate that.
So it's funny, Cam. You guys are legendary throughout the South. And I remember you guys were playing a show at, what was that? It was the Ivy last year, or maybe a year and 6 months ago, I think, for the Super Bowl. And I remember I told one of my friends that's actually quite older. I said, hey, yeah, I'm going to a Velcro Pygmies show. And they go, are those guys still around? I said, absolutely. He says, I saw those guys 20 years ago in Statesboro at Georgia Southern, and they were incredible. And I was like, well, you should come to the show. Come on.
We've got some longevity, that is for sure. I never dreamed in a million years when I put this band together in 1990 that, and I put it together as something to do while I was figuring out what I was going to do with my life. And I never dreamed that it would become a career, and not just a career, but something that has spanned literally generations of fans. We've got people now that come out with their kids, grandkids, aunts and uncles. It's really an amazing thing. So we're very blessed.
For our listeners that might not have heard of you, which they all should have already, but if they have not, tell us a little bit about the band and how would you describe what you do and what you guys are all about?
Well, the Velcro Pygmies, we were born in the 90s. However, we never subscribed to the 90s mentality of rock and roll, which the 90s were a very minimalistic, very dark period, very introspective, melancholy time for music, which I didn't identify with. I identified with David Lee Roth and Poison and Def Leppard and Motley Crue, Kiss, things like that, people that were larger than life. And so we felt like that in the landscape that was being dominated by that Seattle sound, which was very, as I said, very melancholy, we felt like that the market still needed a high energy, over the top, feel good concept. And so while everybody else was chasing that Seattle vibe, we stayed the same, didn't cut our hair, never put on flannel, maintained skin tight clothes and that type deal. And it's really paid off well for us because it has a wide appeal. That style of presentation, and really the Pygmies have always been about the presentation more so necessarily than the music itself. Because whether we're doing a Velcro Pygmy song or whether we're playing a Garth Brooks song, the way it's delivered in that what I like to call superhero rock, that larger than life. And people want to be entertained by large personalities. And so individuals out there that enjoy the big lights and the explosions and the big hair and the screaming loud guitars, that's what we're about. people that come and see us range in ages from 3 years old to 300 years old. We are not bound by gender or race, hell, even language. It doesn't matter. The band is all about the excitement of the moment. So to best describe the band, just think about a controlled chaos that is really over the top and high energy. And just watching us, I think it raises your heart rate. I think you get a good workout just watching us.
I definitely can say, being at a ton of your shows, that, yeah, the energy is just off the charts, and it's pretty much impossible to just stand there and watch it. You're moving around, getting involved with the show. It's really great. Now, you mentioned that you started all this back in 1990, but can you tell us a little bit more about how that came to be? You know, what were you doing at that time? And is that when the Pygmies started, or can you just fill us in a little bit?
The genesis of the band was kind of unique. I have always been a musical person. I started out as a drummer, and my father and I, back when I was 11 years old, we would travel the state of Kentucky where the band was from, and my dad would play the piano and sing Elvis tunes, and I played the drums. And I was kind of like a little trained monkey for my dad, and I was kind of a gimmick. And we would go around and we would play little fairs and dumb things like that. And so when I put the band together, I was the original drummer. And a lot of people aren't aware of that. And so we couldn't find a singer. So I decided that I was going to sing and drum, do a real Phil Collins kind of thing. That didn't work out very well because I was neither a very good singer nor a very good drummer. But my ego was way too big to be hidden behind the drums. So I decided I was going to find a drummer and then become the singer. And that was a horrible mistake because I learned really quickly just how terrible I was singing. And literally, after our first gig, I gave up. I said, this isn't for me. Obviously, I made a bad choice. I don't want to do this. And so I quit. During that period of time, I had an 8-week stint where I had to have TMJ surgery, and my jaw was wired shut. A lot of people say that was their favorite time of their life, being around me, because I couldn't talk. And during that period of time, I made myself this commitment. I said, I am not going to let my lack of talent prevent me from being in a rock and roll band. So once I got out of that recovery situation, they unwired me. I started taking voice lessons and started really kind of studying not only the vocal aspect of being in a rock and roll band, but the business side of it. Because everybody just assumes that, you know, hey, you're in a band and you live fast and you party and that stuff. Well, that's the quickest way to fail. You have to approach this from an entrepreneurial point of view. And that's what I did. And then I realized that I was as much intrigued by the business side of this as I was the performance side. And oftentimes musicians are completely artistically minded and they have no business sense at all. And it really kills them. So I approached this thing just like any other small business. And actually, interesting fact, the Velcro Pygmies were the first rock and roll band to be issued an SBA loan. And this is ages and ages ago. I got written up in Entrepreneur magazine for doing that. And it was really addictive to approach this thing. And I wasn't selling hamburgers or widgets. I was selling rock and roll. And I had to do market research and develop marketing plans and that sort of thing. So the Velcro Pygmies kind of grew out of my desire not only to perform, but to succeed as an entrepreneur. And then I have grown and evolved the band without abandoning what the band is. So even people that saw us at the very beginning in 1990, if they saw us now, they would say, wow, you guys have evolved, but you haven't changed. You're still the same concept. It's just got a few different nuances too. And we always feel like that we have grown. Every member that we've added has brought a new aspect to the band. Every piece of gear we've added has brought a new aspect to the band. So the genesis of the band was basically when I left school, went to University of Kentucky, didn't know what I wanted to do. I figured, what the heck? I'm musically inclined or thought so. I'll put a band together. And then as I dug into that deeper and deeper, I got caught up in it more and more. And that's really what has driven me to this point. Here we are, 30 years later.
One of the questions I have, how many shows do you guys play on average each year?
Well, we average about 200 shows a year. Used to be that was more. And that was mainly because of a lot of the private stuff that was happening on the universities. And this is basically SEC football that I'm going to be familiar with, but I'm sure that this is the case all across the country. But any time that an SEC school would have a home football game, literally every fraternity would have a party Friday and Saturday night. And so our entire calendar would be filled from August through the end of the school year playing fraternity parties, because in the spring you've got everybody has party weeks and things like that. And then you get into the middle of April or March and you've got spring break. So like we would go to Panama City and we would play Club La Vila. We would play 30 days. We would play a whole month there, just straight. It was like a day off every other week kind of a thing. So the performance dynamic has changed a lot now because you just don't see that happening anymore. So there were times when, we might be 250 shows a year, but you figure 30 years times 200, what do you got? What's that, 60,000 shows? I mean, they say that James Brown was the hardest working man in show business, but I guarantee you James Brown could not have kept up with the Velcro Pygmies.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot of shows. How many miles do you do on average?
God, probably, Lord, that's such 100,000 miles a year, maybe more. Just give you an idea. I have a Chevy Tahoe. It's a 2002 Chevy Tahoe that I love. I've had it. It's been my work vehicle. It's got 800,000 miles on it right now.
Good gosh.
People freak out when they hear that I'm driving a Chevy Tahoe with 800,000 miles.
That's incredible.
I hope my Chevy Tahoe lasts even close to that long.
Hey, I keep putting that Lucas oil stuff in it. I swear by it. I think that's what is keeping it alive.
Mark, I don't think they make the new ones like they did, at least back in, you said it was an 02?
Yeah, it's an 02. Yeah, I got a good one. I'm pretty happy with it. It's got all the bells and whistles I could ever want. I love it. It's very serviceable, and she doesn't act like she wants to stop anytime soon, so why should I put her out to pasture?
They don't make them like they used to.
No, they sure don't.
What's something that people should know about you that typically gets glossed over due to the large rock personality you portray?
This is the one thing that surprises people more than anything. I have never tasted alcohol in my life, ever.
That's incredible.
Of any type.
That is wild, Cam.
I mean, even you guys are amazed, right? That is the conversation that I have consistently and have had forever. That people are just like, no way. And then they get real defensive thinking like, oh my God, maybe he's an alcoholic. And I just never have. I've never tasted it in my entire life. And this is all I've ever done. It's the only job I've ever had is playing in a rock and roll band. So I spend my nights with people that consume heavy alcohol. I've been responsible for bars selling thousands and thousands of dollars worth of alcohol. But I myself have never tasted it, ever. And then it's always like, well, what about drugs? What about this? Nope, nothing at all. Hardest thing I've ever done is an Excedrin, which I take 3 a night.
Any particular reason for that, Cam?
Well, it goes back. My father was a Southern Baptist preacher. So I grew up, and my lack of alcohol has nothing to do with what people would assume. Oh, your dad wouldn't allow it. It was because I grew up in the church, and so my family didn't have it in the house, nor did any of my friends. And so when I grew up, all of my friends were from the church. And so when we would go do things, there was no alcohol involved. So by the time that I was exposed to alcohol, which would have been my freshman year in college at UK, my personality was already well defined and developed, and there was no reason. I wasn't curious. I felt like I needed it. And then after that, I was like, well, what's the use? Why even go down that pathway? So it wasn't necessarily conviction. It's certainly not a judgmental thing. Believe me, I am the first one on stage to champion. Hey, if you need a drink, get a drink. I just don't do it myself. And so it's not a matter of a campaign that I'm on to try to keep people from drinking or whatever. It's just something that I don't do. I tell people if they ask, but I'm not a big anti-drinking advocate. I'm not out there carrying a picket sign or anything.
I was always curious about that because I've seen your shows many a times, and every single show without fail that I've seen, people buy you drinks and they give them to you on stage and you're giving them away and say you don't drink. And I was like, that's always interesting.
Yep, that's what I do. And because I never want to disrespect someone's good gesture. So if someone comes up and buys a round of shots for the band, then I will at that moment tell the audience, hey guys, just so you know, I don't drink. So if you buy a drink, I appreciate it, but I will then give it to someone in the audience that will be my pinch drinker, if you will. And that always turns into a cool thing because somebody always wants the free drink. And it makes everybody feel good about it. I never want to disrespect someone's good gesture.
That sounds like a great way to handle it.
Maybe it's part of your success.
Well, there's more of us out there than people realize because we don't cloak ourselves in it like a banner that we want to wave around. We're not looking for attention. It's just a personal decision. And I agree. It provides you with a mental clarity in moments when oftentimes people make big mistakes. And I've watched musicians horribly damage their reputations as a result of alcohol. And even after the apologies and even after reconciliation has taken place, you've already been there, done that. And so people view you differently. So if you make a jerk of yourself to a club owner or to a promoter because at the end of the night you had a few too many drinks, and even if the next day you apologize and it's all worked out, they still look at you differently. And I've never had to go down that path. I've never had to apologize because of inebriation. And I do think that that serves you well when you're in this business.
Absolutely. So one of the things about your band is I really view your band as a show or a production with its own personality, with its own character. And while you guys do sing other people's songs, do you take offense to the term cover band?
Well, no, not really, because number one, most people would never make that description derogatorily, if that's even a word. The only person that would ever use, oh, you're just a cover band, is someone that is trying to hurt you. But a general population that would say, oh, yeah, Velcro Pygmies are a cover band. Well, so is every symphony you've ever heard. So is every Broadway show you've ever seen. Has anyone ever accused a Broadway performer that is singing a Rodgers and Hammerstein song as being a cover performer? No, they're not. And so it shows a lot of uneducated people that think that that is some type of a slight. Because when I look at what we do, we are an entertainment service that we provide to people that purchase the band. It doesn't matter what songs we play. The songs are merely a part of the overall total. The personalities of the band matter. The lighting matters. The sound matters. Everything matters in that experience. So I look at when we deliver something, it is an experience to the audience. How do we make that experience the best? Well, we could get on stage, and the band has 7 original albums. You can download them off Spotify and iTunes and Amazon. Anybody that wants Velcro Pygmy music, you can find it. It's out there. But I don't feel like it's my job or the band's job to bludgeon an audience that is on vacation, say at the beach, with a bunch of music they've never heard before. That's not what they're there for. Those people came to be entertained. Now, if they want to hear a Velcro Pygmy song and that's going to entertain them, we will give them that. But if we're playing in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, we're going to play Sweet Home Alabama. And I guarantee you, we've played Sweet Home Alabama more times than Leonard Skinner has played it. I guarantee you that. Leonard Skinner ought to be paying us every time they play the song. So the thing is that when you look at music from a business perspective, you understand that this whole, oh my God, you're a cover band thing, only immature artists would be offended by that label, because we know that's not what we are. Because we can play a Def Leppard song, and another band could play that song tomorrow, but they would play it completely different. It's a recognizable song, but it doesn't mean that we're playing it like Def Leppard does. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
It is merely a part of what we are.
And I think that from my point of view, these songs are too good not to be played. You don't hear these songs from every single band that's out there, and they need to be played, and people want them to be played. And they can't always get a ticket to the massive concerts that Def Leppard or Journey that come out, and these guys seldom tour anymore. So I definitely like how you guys are keeping this music alive. And I think you're right. Anybody who's saying that you guys aren't playing original songs, why play cover songs when they're not yours, I think is probably immature.
And again, I look at what we do from an entrepreneurial perspective. So I'm going to use Club La Vila as an example. And the people that are listening to this, you got to be my age to even really understand what the heyday of Club La Vila was in Panama City. So we would go down there and we would play spring break. And as I said, we would do 2 14-day stints. So we'd be down there for 30 days. Well, there were two stages at Club La Vila. There was the stage that what they called the A band or the attraction band, which is what we would be on. We would play and we would do 3 hours a night. And then when we would take a break, which we don't do anymore, thank God, because I hate taking breaks. When we would take a break, there would be an original band that would play on the other stage. Well, invariably, we're playing, you got 1,000 kids in the room, they're jumping up and down, screaming and hollering, playing, whatever idiot song we're playing. And then when we would take a break and the original band would play their 30 minutes, everybody would leave the room and nobody would hear their music. Well, it really almost turned into an adversarial relationship. And so one of the guys in one of the original bands came up to me and was really being condescending to me. And so I sat him down. I said, hey, man, let me ask you a question. I said, you guys played 30 minutes, right? How many songs you played during that 30 minutes? Oh, we probably played 10 songs. Okay, 10 songs. 30 minutes for nobody. I said, we played for 3 hours for 1,000 people. During that 3 hours, we also played 10 original songs, but we played them to people. So the fact that the kids were there listening to Sweet Home Alabama, but they also listened to a Velcro Pygmy song after we had played that, and then we went into Brown Eyed Girl, whatever else they wanted to hear. From a business and an entrepreneur point of view, that was a lot more effective in selling Velcro Pygmy music. So we're using the cover tunes to engage a fan base that when they go to our website, then can research the original music, because we don't let our egotistical idiocy get in the way of that process, as so many all original bands do, because they want to be purists. And what that purity gets them is out of business, because they can't make enough money to support that purity, and then invariably they give up. And after we had that conversation, it really changed his perspective on things. He was like, wow, I'd never really thought about it that way.
I think that's a genius way to articulate it, especially using that music that people are going to like as kind of an intro to what you're going to introduce them to. Can you tell us a little bit more about your original music?
The Velcro Pygmy original music, it sounds like something that would have been written in 1985. And that's on purpose, because we know that our fans that are embracing a song like Living on a Prayer or Pour Some Sugar on Me or Talk Dirty to Me, if they're already enjoying that kind of music, we didn't want them to go to the Velcro Pygmy website and listen to our originals and it sound like Tool, We wanted it to be consistent. So we want the original sound to be consistent with the cover sound. And then also when we play an original song during our show, we don't announce it. We just play it. And it's seamless, because I know that my job is to win the fans. That's what we have to do first. You've got to win the fans over. Once they become a part of your fan base, then they will be hungry for T-shirts and hats and original music. So a lot of guys' egos are so big that they want to bludgeon the audience with a song that the audience has never heard before. And that is the wrong approach to do that. So when people eventually make that step into, hey, I'm going to buy a Velcro Pygmy CD, they're like, oh my God, I've heard that song before. I can't believe it. I thought that was just a cover tune that just slid in there. And so we do that on purpose. It's a long-term process, but it works. And that's how we get people to buy CDs and download music and buy shirts and hats and get Velcro Pygmy logos tattooed on their bodies.
I think that's great. You're just tapping into what they already want instead of trying to convince them what they want.
Exactly right.
So Cam, what do you say to people who characterize your band as like a relic of the past or a tribute to the 80s? Because I personally think that people that see your shows know that you guys are just all around good time entertainment once they see you. But people might pitch it as like, oh, we got an 80s cover band, tribute to the past.
Exactly.
How do you break that mold?
I think people do that because they don't know how to classify us. And we have struggled with that. Our management company struggles with it because every Velcro Pygmy show is completely different dependent on the audience that is in attendance. So you may hear some of the same songs, but you'll never hear them in the same order because I force the band into spontaneity. We don't use a set list, so we never know what song's coming next. I never pre-plan the show. So I put the band in a position to where we have to be spontaneously reactive to the way the audience is. And so if the band doesn't know what's coming next, the audience sure as hell doesn't know what's coming next. And I try to reach out and am extremely interactive. Very few bands are as interactive as the Velcro Pygmies. Generally, when you go see a band, one of the things that people will oftentimes not enjoy is that the band or the lead singer is too engaging with the audience. Well, that's because he has nothing or she has nothing to say. And if the only thing that you have to say to the audience is, hey, everybody, how you feeling tonight? Or everybody scream and that kind of thing, that's not very entertaining. And so I've developed a persona to where we bring the audience into the performance themselves, to where I'll talk to them, I'll meet them, I'll bring them on stage, we'll get them to sing along with us and things like that. And that creates a total spontaneous situation that no one could pre-plan. And so it's really hard to describe that to a club. It's like a, hey, you got to see it to understand it. We tried to capture it on video, can't do it. And so when people classify us as an 80s tribute band, that's just because they don't know any better. That's the best they can do. And it's been a struggle. It's been a struggle for the band. And that's why most of our growth occurs from people witnessing it with their own eyes. We don't do very well with sending out promos and things like that because it's not representative of what the club is going to get. And so if somebody's interested in a Velcro Pygmy show, we bring them to the show so they can see it with their own two eyes. Because that's the only way you get it, is if you are there in the audience experiencing it, because what we are is an experience in that moment. And that experience is going to be different tonight, tomorrow, the next night. Be the same people coming 3 nights in a row, they can have 3 totally different experiences.
Chris and I can both attest to that. It is definitely a show. It is definitely interactive, and it works.
And people want to be entertained, and that is an art that has been lost. It is an art that has been watered down because nowadays we have access to so much material, whether it's on YouTube or the internet in general, and all of that can be fabricated. So there's so many times that a new song will come out and you'll watch the video and go, oh my God, that band is great. And then you go see them live and you're really disappointed because they cannot reproduce the energy that was in the video. Well, no, they can't, because that's all fabricated. You can make anybody look exciting on video. And so the actual art of entertainment, and this goes back to people like Elvis and Frank Sinatra and Michael Jackson and Prince and the guys that were true entertainers. Those are the people that I look up to. People like David Lee Roth, people like Freddie Mercury, Steven Tyler, the people that really did it, that really, really entertained and grabbed an audience. People like Neil Diamond or Jimmy Buffett, for crying out loud. You know, people that could connect. And we've lost that. And so when people come out and see the Pygmies, a lot of times they're experiencing an entertainment experience that they've never had before. And it's like, oh my God, I've just discovered something that I didn't even know existed.
That's awesome. I think that it makes sense what you're saying. It's like having a conversation, right? You know, you can't just, if you're having a one-way conversation, you can't expect other people to engage with you. You got to listen to what they're saying and then react to it.
A Pygmy show, and you've articulated that very well, is a dialogue. And I tell our audiences, I said, we do not want to subject you to an experience. We want to share an experience with you. So we're all going down this path together. It's just that you have a role in this experience and we have a role in it, but none of us know what's going to happen. We just know it's going to be a really good time.
Yeah, for sure. Well, as you're doing all this touring around, and I'm sure you're exposed to other bands, I'm curious to know, what are your thoughts on the other tribute bands that you see around?
The tribute band thing is, it's really blown up and they're doing very well because a lot of those artists you can't see anymore. And so it's one of those things where I can't go see the Beatles anymore or the Doors anymore, or maybe not the Rolling Stones, but I can go see this tribute band and kind of get my fix a little bit. So I do not begrudge those bands at all. The problem I have with tribute bands from the standpoint of me ever being able to be in one is I'm not good enough. Because if you are somebody that is a true aficionado of, say, the Beatles, you're going to be watching that very critically. And if they're not exactly on it, you're going to be critical of it. And then there's the other side of that coin where if you are a Guns N' Roses tribute band, well, your average casual Guns N' Roses fan, you know, your sorority girl, she probably knows 3 Guns N' Roses songs. She's not interested in 90 minutes of Guns N' Roses that she doesn't know. So I feel like that what we do is we provide a little taste of what everybody wants, a little bit of country, a little bit of dance, a little bit of rock. So we kind of satisfy everybody with things that are easily digestible and recognizable. And for my concept, that works a lot better than being a tribute. Now, I will say this. We do try to highlight and pay tribute to that era, that mindset of the 80s, of the sort of everybody having a good time. And I make a lot of jokes in the show about 80s things like Atari and MTV and CDs and record stores and things like that. So we tie a little nostalgia in there so that that audience that may be 45 to 65 feels like they connect with us as well, because they may not be connecting as much with the jumping up and down and the high energy. But when I start to connect with the things that they remember from their time in high school, it really creates a nice bond between the band and those individuals.
I think you're 100% correct there, Cam, about the tribute bands. I've seen many, but I think your average listener, like you said, the average sorority girl, the average dude, he knows 3 Def Leppard songs, he knows 3 Journey songs, he knows 3 Guns N' Roses songs, he knows 3 Poison songs.
Right.
So sitting for a 90-minute set, or like you said, might get a little bit stale or boring.
Exactly. That's right.
That's what I was thinking. You know, it's basically like a tribute to the era with some extra party favors thrown in there so everybody can relate to it.
That's what we are. We are a tribute to the era. And one of the things that I would like to say is that I think people gravitate to the Pygmies because we are authentic. And we oftentimes get compared to the band Steel Panther. And I'm a Steel Panther fan. I think they're cool and they're funny and all that kind of stuff. But they're very novelty. And the one thing about the Pygmies, when you come see us, is that we're not novelty. We're sincere. So there's no wigs in the band. Everything is 100% legitimately delivered. And I think the audience gets that. We're not making fun of that era. We're celebrating that era. And a lot of the younger guys that have put together these 80s sort of stylistic bands with the bad spandex and the bad wigs from Party City, to me, it's almost a little disrespectful. They're like poking fun at it. Whereas I'm not. I'm celebrating it. I'm celebrating the look of the 80s, the attitude of the 80s, the style, the performance aspect of it. And so I think that's carried us through as well, our sincerity in our presentation.
That's very well said. I would also say that listening to you here and seeing you guys a few times live, you know, just the fact that you relate better to me from like a regional perspective. You know, you guys are touring around the South, you know what the deal is when you go to Tuscaloosa, you know what the deal is when you go to Athens, and it's a little bit more insider. You know, you can put some inside jokes out there and, add that into
Absolutely.
the show.
And I love doing that. And I think that surprises people a lot whenever we have an awareness about the city or the area that we are in, and we can communicate and people kind of connect like, oh my God, this guy, he knows about the Bulldogs and he knows about Southern Miss and he knows about the Kentucky Wildcats. And it adds a little bit of this person connects to me. And we do that on purpose. I want to be educated on those types of things. I want to be connected to our audience.
Wow, that was a fun interview. I really enjoyed how he went into detail on why they play cover tunes and how they work in original music.
Definitely. I thought it was really interesting to hear what kept the drive going for so many great years. Thank you so much for listening to the show. Make sure to catch part 2 of 3, where Cam tells us his advice for new bands thinking about touring, the hardest and easiest types of crowds to win over, and how they manage to stay fit on the road.
Make sure you click to subscribe to the show with your podcast provider, and please consider leaving us a 5-star review. We would really appreciate it. Also, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter so you can stay up to date with everything we do. All links can be found at peopledownsouth.com.
And if you happen to know anyone personally who you think we should interview for the podcast, we'd love an introduction. Email us at team@peopledownsouth.com. And as always, the views and opinions expressed by our guests on the podcast are theirs and do not necessarily reflect our own.
We are your hosts, Mark and Chris, and you have been listening to the People Down South podcast.
See y'all next time.
See y'all next time.
See y'all next time.
See y'all next time. See y'all next time.
See y'all next time.
See y'all next time.